Good evening, members. I'll hand over to the Reverend Peter Edwards for prayers.
We're currently in the season of Epiphany, when the church celebrates that the good news of Jesus Christ was made known to all people, to the Jews first and then also to the Gentiles. It's a time when we pray especially for unity, and that's something we must always strive for, both in the church and, of course, in our public life. So as we consider the business that lies before us this evening, I invite you to join me in keeping a few moments of silence as we devote this time to God. Let us pray. God our Father, we remember before you with gratitude those who in their different capacities serve this community. We pray for those who safeguard the public health and minister to the sick, those who provide for the welfare of the young and care for the elderly and infirm, those who serve in local government, administer the law and preserve the peace. Assist them in their varied duties and deepen within us all the spirit of loving service. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, members. Please be seated. All right, good evening, members. Item number 1, apologies for absence.
Chairman. Councillor Heaney and Councillor Fairley. Thank you.
Councillor Pemberton. I'm sure you can find somewhere. Put a chair on the end of a table if okay. I'm sure you can find yourself a seat somewhere, Councillor Pemberton. Okay. If you'd like to care to join Councillor Turner. Thank you. Item number 3, minutes of the last meeting. Can I ask the Council if they're agreed? Thank you. Item number 4, declarations of interest. Anybody wishes to make any declarations? I see none. Thank you very much. Item number 5, announcements by the Chairman. Thank you to those members who came along and took part in the Chairman's Charity Quiz last Friday. Your support was greatly appreciated in helping raise much-needed funds for a new venture by Tendring Community Transport, working closer with the communities of Harwich and Jaywick Sands. So thank you very much, members, for that. I also wish to recognise 2 local recipients of the new Queen's New Year's Honours. First of all, Gary Smith. Many of you know is the head teacher of Marketfield School in Elmstead Market. He's been made an OBE for his services to children with special needs in Essex. And Caroline Gard has been awarded the British Empire Medal for services to young people and to charity. So we can give them a round of applause, please, members. Thank you. Item number 6, announcements by the Chief Executive.
I have none, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 7, statements by the Leader of the Council, Councillor Stock. Thank you. Item number 8, statements by members of the Cabinet. Do we have any? Item number 9, petition to Council, report to the Chief Executive A1.
Thank you, Chairman. As per page 17, we've received a petition in relation to Ipswich Road toilets. In accordance with the Council's approved scheme for dealing with petitions, this matter will now be investigated and a report will be prepared and presented to the Cabinet on the basis that it contains between 30 and 249 signatures. Members will be aware that the next practical ordinary meeting of the Cabinet is on the 15th of February 2019. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Item number 10, Petitions to Council. Report of the Corporate Director A2. Councillor Stock.
Yeah, Chairman.
I think we're going to allow the petitioner who's already seated at the microphone. So, Mr. Lecornu, if you'd like to read out your petition, please.
Thank you. Good evening to you all. What I would like to read out to you, that we wish to emphasise that the decision to close 10 toilets in Tendring is causing considerable concern, particularly to the elderly, disabled and vulnerable. We are aware, of course, that central government is reducing resources for local councils and therefore making it difficult for social services to be maintained, and we sympathise with our councillors for the dilemma which they face in determining which services to prioritise. It will be of interest for you to know that in London, £6 million is to be invested to secure permanent toilets along 40 routes for London's bus drivers, who will now have the basic dignity of knowing that they have access to a toilet while at work. This action has been encouraged by the evidence that being denied access to a toilet can cause a range of health problems, including digestive and urinary tract problems and kidney infections, which can develop into more serious health conditions. Also, people on certain medications may need to visit the toilet on a more frequent occasion, and exposure to the cold may also increase the need to use a toilet. Evidence also clearly demonstrates that women need to urinate more frequently when pregnant, menstruating, and during the menopause. In addition, prostate problems in men may mean that they need to urinate more frequently. Further evidence of the effect of curtailment of this service can be determined to people's health, detrimental to people's health and welfare, was revealed at a recent Communication Workers Union conference, at which it was discovered that toilet facilities for postal delivery workers at Royal Mail disproportionately affects women, resulting in women going without drinking to avoid needing to use a toilet while out delivering, leading to instances of women being hospitalised with kidney infection caused by not drinking enough when out delivering. We consider that the above information indicates quite clearly the need for augmentation of these services rather than curtailment. Now, we would remind you that this public service has become a national issue and in existence for 167 years. More than a quarter of Britain's public toilets have disappeared since 2000. Britain's public loos are being wiped out at a staggering rate as councils struggle with government budget cuts, leaving a number of local authorities without any publicly run toilets at all. Please forgive us for concluding that those who pioneered this service, it would seem, were more enlightened than those of today. This problem leaves people with nowhere to go when they need to and is affecting everyone. We are aware that while it's not a legal requirement to provide this service, and so is easy to cut, it is in our view that closing this established, important social service is a denial of a basic human right. And as I mentioned earlier, a lack of public toilets can also be a serious health risk. Now, I hope, ladies and gentlemen, that you will take these seriously and that you will ensure that toilets are not cut but augmented. After all, we are in the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stock.
Thank you, Chairman. This is obviously Councillor Mixhill's portfolio, and as members are probably aware, Mick had a bit of a nasty fall the other day, so I'm sure we all wish him a speedy recovery and a swift return to active service. So I'm stepping in really for him on this one. I'd like to move that we thank the petitioners for taking the time to make their petition, and we note the contents of their the front page of their petition. If I can just speak to some of the facts, though, we have more toilets in this district than any other district council anywhere in the country.
Apologies, Councillor Stock. Before you continue, can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that, Chairman.
Councillor Giuliani, thank you. Up to you, carry on.
Good point, Chairman. Where was I? Yeah, we not only have more toilets in this district than any other district, we are spending more on improving our toilets than any other local authority anywhere in the country. We had 39 public conveniences in this district. Many other authorities have none. They have absolutely zero. I believe Newcastle has one council-owned toilet in the whole of Newcastle upon Tyne. We have closed some public toilets. Some of them were simply not fit for purpose. They were completely out of date. They were disgusting. They were appalling. They were not being used, certainly as public conveniences, for the proper purpose. We've opened some new ones. We've spent a lot of money improving the other ones we've got left. So we've gone down from 39 to 34. That is a slight reduction, Chairman, I'll acknowledge. But the ones that we've got left are far better than they were before. So I'm more than happy with the strategy that we've got. And we do have a strategy for public conveniences that has been through the full rigour of the council's scrutiny processes and the decision-making process to get to that stage of having a policy in place. And Chairman, I think it's the right thing to do. We do have to be very careful with public money. It costs an awful lot of money. I note that the government have recently announced that they're going to be abolishing NNDR on public toilets, which means that council tax, business rates, if you like, won't be payable on public toilets anymore. And that could open the way for shops and public buildings to open their toilets to the public and claim a bit of a rate advantage. I don't know the details, but I'm looking forward to that happening, because that would then open up lots of other opportunities for people to use the toilet. I fully accept the points made by Mr Le Cornu in his speech about the need for certain people to use the toilet an awful lot. We're simply never going to be able to provide a toilet on every street corner for every single possible person that might want to use one. We have got 34 in this district. I defy you to find another district that's got even half that many. Go to Colchester, I think they've got 2, Chairman. Chairman, I've moved the recommendation. It's been seconded that we note the contents of the petition, and we thank the petitioners for contacting us.
Thank you. Councillor Broderick.
First of all, apologies, Mr Chairman. I should have declared that I'm a member of TEMPAG. I understand what Councillor Stock is saying, but one day you will maybe regret, you young things in here, have got to understand what it's like being stuck at home. You cannot go out unless you know where there's a loo. And it's all very well saying Colchester's got 2, they've got department stores. You could say that ladies, retired ladies, or people can go into pubs and ask them, but they won't do that. It's too embarrassing. This is in certain areas, this is just absolute human right, as Mike has said. It impacts severely on disabled, elderly, people who can't walk fast. The strategy that we did, and I took part in it, and I accept that it won through council. It needs updating. Perhaps it wasn't fully informed at the time. Perhaps we should have done maybe a bit more of a consultation. Really like to try and urge everybody to think again on this, because I know we've got a lot of toilets, but they're not, the ones that are closed are needed. We're saving money by keeping people in their own homes. Their independence, they don't have to go into care, and they need to be able to get to shops and just to get out of the house, even socially, to go for a coffee or to a community centre or a library if we've got any left. So can we try and think about this a bit more kindly, because it's not as straightforward as we seem to have thought when we did the strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to, and I know that the hard work that TEMPAG has done over the years, and I congratulate them on the work and bringing this very important issue to this council chamber and bringing it to the forefront for people to consider. And I congratulate the way that was put, including all of those concerns and issues, not only for the residents here, but also those workers here that have to go about their work on a daily basis and obviously do sometimes need those public conveniences. I know, speaking with experience from my area, we closed a toilet in Dovercourt near the cemetery, and at that time we thought at the time that was underused. But since people have actually come to us, taxi drivers and other people who have actually said while they're out and about and doing their work, they actually did make a lot of use of that toilet, and they have missed that toilet being there. So I do think when we make these decisions that we do need to recognise some of the things that Mike Lecornu's mentioned there, and also that Joy's mentioned. It's become quite a serious issue about isolation and loneliness, so serious that the government has actually appointed a minister specifically looking at that issue. And we now know from some of and Mike referred to it, some of the government cuts to local government finance and the impact that that's had. For instance, like doing away with Meals on Wheels, that contact with people in their own homes. It's getting more and more the case that elderly people are finding it very difficult to actually see someone during the day, someone who they rely on to talk to. So the one thing they do need, if they've got these medical conditions, is when they do go out, they need to make sure make sure that they've got somewhere, if they do need to use the public conveniences, they are available to use. Otherwise, they will just stay at home and be lonely and isolated. One of the biggest causes of elderly people's deaths is isolation and loneliness and not being able to get out to the shops and meet people during the day. So I think when we do make these decisions, and I believe this council actually, I think that might have been the Conservative administration at one time, they created a pensioners forum, and they said they were going to listen to pensioners and listen to their views and concerns around the district and act on those concerns. I think sometimes it would be a good thing if we actually did that and put that into practice and sat down with these elderly people and listened to what their needs are. And the issue about other areas, about how many toilets they've got in those areas, it doesn't come into question. I know Tendring, from when I was in Parliament, was one of the highest areas of elderly population. So we know that for a fact. We've got one of the biggest care industries in the country. So we do know our population are an elderly population. So we do know that those elderly people are using our shops and our town centres and leisure areas, and they will need the opportunity to use those public conveniences. So I think, again, when we make these decisions, we need to be very careful, and we need to listen to people and listen to what their needs are for the future. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Newton. Microphone.
Sorry? Oh, but as a resident of Holland-on-Sea, I'd like to say to Councillor Stock, it doesn't really matter how many toilets we have in the town centre. You can hardly expect people in their 70s and 80s to go galloping into Rosemary Road just because we've got a posh toilet. They actually need it where they're going to go shopping. And many of those people try to keep their independence and try very hard to go out and do their own shopping. And yes, as others have said, that is possibly one of their days when they can have some interaction with other people. Otherwise, they're just living alone. But more importantly is the damage that, as this gentleman really clearly highlighted, that is caused when someone actually needs to use a public convenience and there isn't one there. And in fact, I know that Holland, the councillors of Holland did offer to take those toilets over and man them and to ensure that there would be no bad happenings going on in there and that they would close them at 6 o'clock. And I think it would help if this council, if we all took stock of the fact that those people need their public convenience. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Porter.
That's it.
Is it on? Yeah. Okay. So, once again, we're cutting services, and it's taxpayers' money, yet the civil servants maintain their high salaries. So it says here we save £100,000 by getting rid of these toilets, yet we have a CEO on £130,000 a year, and many other staff on extremely high wages. So why is it all the services get cut, yet none of the civil servant salaries ever get cut? Or we don't reduce the staff down and we provide the service, which would be a far better way of spending taxpayers' money than just paying people extremely high salaries in an area where nobody else is going to get a job and the sort of salaries that this council pays, which are outrageous. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Winfield.
Thank you, Chairman. As Councillor Stock said, using the shop's toilets can be highly dangerous, in my concern anyway. The shops are very small in Holland-on-Sea. They haven't got the staff, and to let someone come in and use your toilets, normally out the back you have stock, valuables, etc. In my case, razors, scissors, and you just can't let the public walk in and out, and you can't stop every time they come in to use your toilet. And that goes for a lot of the shops in Holland-on-Sea. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I first of all say that although I support entirely the District Council's decision to review the number of toilets and to make cuts, and I acknowledge the excellent service that they provide on the whole across this area, I would be failing my residents in Wharton if I didn't bring to your attention that not a week goes by when I'm not faced with issues raised by residents over the closure of Mill Lane toilets in Wharton. I admit that I was quite pleased that they were closed because they were in such a poor state of repair. However, I want to bring to the attention of this council that at the moment Wharton, which is one of the main tourist towns after all in Tendring, doesn't have a public toilet that's open during the winter months in the town centre area. And there may be scope on behalf of Wharton residents to review this and to, close one of the others and to open one that's in the town centre. Please, I can tell you, some of the stories I've been told by residents are extremely worrying and quite distressing to listen to. Quite a few accidents have happened and, people are crying, distressed because they feel very embarrassed by what's happened. So my plea is that the council re-looks at Walton to ensure that there is a toilet within the town centre area that's open. I don't know how we're going to do that. The Keynote doesn't have disabled access, but that at least would provide a service to an awful lot of residents. And the other issue is that our bus drivers have been complaining because they usually pull in front of the Keynote and rush to the loo on the journeys, and they don't have that facility in the winter months. So can I please ask that may be reviewed with the officers, just to see if something temporarily can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. We all know that we have a very large population of elderly people, and that isn't going to change. We're going to have more and more elderly people, and some of us may join that number one day. We need to plan ahead, we need to think ahead. We don't need less toilets, we do need more. And I would also put in a plea for the consideration of disabled access, disabled toilets for wheelchair use, and a generous size for a wheelchair, because sometimes a wheelchair user needs to have a helper in the toilet with them. And it's very, very difficult, even in some wheelchair-friendly toilets, to be able to do that. I do have experience of this, and it's not nice and it's not pleasant. Please let us think ahead as a council. Yes, we have done incredibly well in the provision of public toilets in our district, but let us not be complacent. We do have a lot of elderly folk, and we need to look after them. And of course, mothers with young children, tourists in the summer. Our population is going up all the time. Let us not forget that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Guglielmi.
I do sympathise greatly with the sentiment of the gentleman that has so eloquently presented his petition to council. In my division of Essex County Council, I have 13 parish councils, with only 2 of those villages having public conveniences. The other 11 do not benefit from any such luxury. Let me assure you that we have a great number of elderly residents living in my division, and they do all live at home. They do shop, they take taxis, they have quite good life, and they kind of regulate their shopping and their trips out with whatever medical problems they have. It is unsustainable to run public conveniences, A, when in a terrible state of disrepair, and B, when they're not used, quite frankly. Probably the lack of use comes from the antisocial activities that goes on in there. But, there isn't enough police there isn't enough enforcement officers to ensure that these antisocial behaviour activities don't carry on. In fact, we've been very successful in turning some of those that we've closed, Mr. Chairman, into making an income to the council. They've been marketed by the property services, and those in which we've invested, they're absolutely 100% fit for purpose for the 25th century. I do sympathise, but I would like to remind the gentleman, as well as members, that in the north of the district, we do not have any public conveniences, but we do have the equal amount of elderly population, and that doesn't seem to be a problem there, Mr. Chairman. So I shall be supporting the taking no action on the petition put forward to council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stock.
Chairman, thank you, Chairman. It was a very interesting debate, and I thank everyone who took part in it. I would say I think it's grossly inappropriate to make personal comments about the Chief Executive's salary in relation to it was. So don't...
Councillor Porter, you must let Councillor Stock speak. Councillor Stock, please continue. Councillor Stock, please continue.
Thank you, Chairman. I didn't interrupt him. I think it's grossly inappropriate. The Chief Executive doesn't make the decisions on this council. We do as members, and we can criticise each other, but we should never criticise the staff for doing their job. Chairman, the points have been well made by all sides. I have a lot of sympathy for the issues raised. We are in a difficult financial situation, and we have to make some tough decisions. So what we have done here, we've come up with a strategy that very clearly wasn't simply about cutting toilets to save money. It was about improving the offer of the toilets that we've got. We've opened 4 new ones, as Carlo was just saying there, that are detailed in the agenda item, that are specialist facilities that do enable wheelchairs, etc., to use them. We've got 34 toilets where we had 39 before, but the 34 we've got are much, much better than the 39 that we had before. So I'm really happy with what we're doing with public toilets. As I say, it is worth bearing in mind we have way more public toilets. We've possibly got as many in tendering alone as the rest of Essex put together. It's a discretionary service. We don't have to as a district. There's no obligation on the district council to provide toilets, but we do anyway, and we plan to carry on doing it. Essex County Council could provide the toilets all around the place. They don't. National government, regional government, the European Parliament, they could all fund public toilets, but they don't. Instead, it's left to us here in the district council to provide public toilets. We're the only ones. Shopkeepers, as Councillor Winfield was saying, some shopkeepers make their facilities available and others choose not to. I run a shop. If somebody wants to use my toilet, it's a bit annoying, but you can't really say no, or I don't say no, because of course where I am there's no public conveniences. So, Chairman, I have a great deal of sympathy for the people who have spoken in favour of more public toilets. I'm sure we'll always consider, if somebody makes a compelling case for a new location for a public toilet, but in the current economic climate, it would have to be a joint venture, I think, for it to have any possible chance of succeeding. And there have been several of those, Chairman. I think there'll be more in the future going forward. So I do think that public conveniences in total are likely to increase in this district over the next 10 years. They won't all be solely run by and owned by Tendring District Council. There'll be joint ventures, or they'll be solely privately owned and run for the benefit of residents of the district. But I moved, Chairman, that we note the contents of the report and thank the petitioners for moving it, and I commend that to the Council, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stock. Somebody else wishes to speak?
Could we have a name vote on that, Chairman?
11 members, please. Stand up. Thank you. We have the numbers. We'll move to a named vote. Hand over to the Chief Executive.
Members, just to be clear in terms of what is before you now, is that the Council thanks the petitioner for taking the time to submit their petition and speaking on it, and note the statement on page 1 of his petition and take no further action. Thank you. Okay, I shall now read out the name. Please say if you are for, or against, or abstain to the motion before you. Councillor Alexander.
Sorry, could you clarify for us again what we're voting on, please?
Sorry, if I read that again, yes. The motion before you is the Council thanks the petitioner for taking the time to submit their petition and speaking on it, and note the statement on page 1 of his petition and take no further action. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So, I shall read out the name, and if you say for, against, or abstain. Councillor Alexander. Councillor Amos. Councillor Baker. Councillor Bennison. Councillor Bray. Councillor Broderick. Councillor B.E. Brown. Councillor J.A. Brown. Councillor Brown, M. Brown, sorry. Councillor Buke. Councillor Bush. Councillor Callender. Councillor Calver. Councillor Cawthron. Councillor Chapman. Sorry, I didn't hear that. Same, thank you. Councillor Chittock. Councillor Coley. Councillor Cousins. Councillor Davis. Councillor Everett. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Fowler. Councillor Gray. Councillor Griffiths. Councillor G. Guglielmi. Councillor V. Guglielmi. Councillor I. Henderson. Councillor J. Henderson. Councillor Holmes. Councillor P. Honeywood. Councillor S. Honeywood. Councillor Khan. Councillor King. Councillor Land. Councillor McWilliams. Councillor Miles. Councillor Newton. Councillor Nichols. Councillor Pemberton. Councillor Platt. Councillor Punian. Councillor Porter. Councillor Raby. Councillor Scott. Councillor M.J. Skills Jr. Councillor Steady. Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Stock. Councillor Talbot. Councillor Turner. Councillor Watson. Councillor White. Councillor Whitmore. Councillor Winfield. And Councillor Yeller.
Abstain.
Thank you. Members, the vote is as follows: 27 for the motion, 22 against the motion, 6 abstentions, and therefore the motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 11, questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.1. Oh, my apologies. Mr. LeCurn, if you wish, you're welcome to remain for the rest of the meeting. But if you'd like to retire, you're very welcome to do so. And we'll also write to you to confirm the decision of what happened here this evening. Okay, moving on. Item number 11, questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.1. There are none on this occasion. Item number 12, questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 11.2. There are none on this occasion. Item number 13, report to the Leader of the Council, Councillor Stock.
Chairman, this is on page 23, and I move that it be noted.
Okay, so all those in favour? Thank you. And against? Any abstentions? Thank you. It's carried. Item number 14, minutes of the committees. Councillor Stock.
Chairman, can I move all the minutes en bloc?
Okay. All those in favour? Was that in favour, Councillor Henderson? I'll allow you that one question.
Thank you, Chairman. Apart from that, yes, I support it. But there was just one query on the meeting of Resources and Services Overview Committee, which was held on the 29th of November, where it says on page 28 about digitalisation. And I just wanted to just flag up, and I know the council are aware of it, but we need to be very careful when we're moving ahead with digitalisation that we don't create exclusion as well, because there are those people that find it very hard. So when we are converting and we're pushing ahead with that, we need to make sure that we bring other people with us, or we make conditions available for those people to still.
Okay. Did you have a question specifically to the minutes of the meeting?
So to the chairman.
Thank you.
When the committee looks at this, or any other committee, if he refers it to it, could they take that on board? That digitalisation is not for everyone, and we need to make concessions.
Thank you. All those in favour? Any against? Okay. Thank you very much. Item number 15, motion to Council. Councillor Honeywood.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to move my motion.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Everett. Thank you very much. Councillor Calver, have you been read this motion? You are aware of it? Okay, fine. You're very welcome. So I'm going to refer this to the Community and Leadership Committee for further scrutinisation. Thank you. Item number 16, recommendations from Cabinet. Councillor Gugliani.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may open my presentation by thanking all those members that gave a huge amount of valuable time to this light touch review as it was built at the beginning of it, and also to our supporting officers, which have done an incredible job to translate our various bombarding questions and suggestions into firm proposals. Mr. Chairman, following the debate at our last council meeting, we have in front of us a revisited recommendation to the council procedure rules, namely the scheme delegation for the planning committee and the HR subcommittee. This will formalise the way in which planning application can be called to determination by the committee, and how to nominate a substitute member of the subcommittee on the HR committee other than the leader. Members will find in front of them a proposed amendment from Councillor Everett to the scheme of delegation, which I know he will be moving as soon as I've finished presenting this item. We are also in the same paper proposing to change the title of the Local Plan Committee to the Planning Policy and Local Plan Committee. This will enable the committee to have the ability to set policies as long as they're in tandem and do not conflict with the National Planning Policy Framework. We are also proposing to include leisure and tourism and the incoming housing strategy in the workload of the Community Leadership Overview Scrutiny Committee, and to set bi-monthly meetings for them. Of course, nothing stops emergency meetings being called in between. These changes, if approved, will come into operation immediately, as reflected in the recommendation on page 44. A discussion within the Constitutional Working Party took place on the start time of full councils, and having considered comments from some of our members who are in full-time employment, they found it difficult to get here later, so I'm kind of proposing that we leave the start time at 7:30. From May 2019, when the new council will take over, we are proposing changes to the committee membership to reflect the reduction in numbers of members on the council from 60 to 48. The most noticeable change will be in the Planning Policy and Local Plan Committee, which will go down from 15 down to 11. If you remember when this was set up, members were very keen that all political persuasion was present on the committee. I think we're now gone a long way from that, and 11 members on the committee will be a very good representation, I feel. Finally, Mr. Chairman, a very comprehensive discussion took place, and a great deal of time went into looking on how to improve the way we deal with the motions. Following the decision of Cabinet to carry out more consultation with group leaders and other members. At this present time, every motion that we have in front of us stands automatically deferred either to Cabinet or to the relevant Overview Scrutiny Committee. Our Constitution states that quite clearly. There is no other way to deal with motion other than dispatching them to the right place, although occasionally we have allowed the odd one to be discussed on the night. But there's no formal process to do that. At the moment, the mover and seconder do not even have the right to present their motion to Council and to explain the reason behind why they're proposing what they are. What I am proposing now is that the motions will be fully presented by the proposer and the seconder, but it will introduce a much more transparent and formal system. The mover and seconder will also get two further bites of the cherry by being able to speak to either Cabinet or the relevant ONS committee where it's gone to, and then back to council when it comes back after the work's been done. If there is a general assent and discussion, however, a motion will always be able to take it on the night. If the leader, the relevant portfolio holder, the relevant committee chairman agree, and they've got a few days in which to consult with each other, that the motion will be allowed to be taken on the night. The decision will rest on the shoulder of the chairman of the council. It is the working group desire that the chairman of the council, as well as any other chairman of committee in the new council, will receive much more intense training, a more enhanced way of how to deal with the constitution. Maybe there will be some kind of constitutions training as well to be allowed. So therefore the chairman will be far more informed and much better placed than he is at the moment. He will have to explain to council why the motion is taken on the night, or not, as the case may be, as opposed to the current system that there is a lot of background discussions and not very clear into what's happening.
End up, please, Councillor.
Yeah, I will do. Mr. Chairman, before I move, I would like to assure everyone that once these changes are implemented, another review in 6 months will take place to see how well it's worked or not, as the case may be. And I would like that to carry on into the new council year, and hopefully everybody will be working much better off with it. I'll so move, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Chairman. I feel this is somewhat a technical amendment I'm making here, so I intend to be brief. Details of the amendment I'm proposing are laid out in the amendment appendices A2 in front
Councillor Everett, sorry, but before you continue, do you have a seconder for your motion? Councillor Turner, thank you. Your amendment, sorry.
Thank you. It is the case that in this proposal there are delegations that put most of the decision-making powers of what can and cannot be determined by the planning committee into officers' hands. I have no problem with that. That is as it should be. We should be delegating as much administration decision-making as possible to our officers. However, there's one part of that delegation document that permits councillors to have a say in making decisions about what should be determined by committee. It is, in my view, that is too restrictive. What is proposed in the motion before you tonight is that only ward members, and in some limited circumstances neighbouring councillors, can now call in an application to committee. I believe that would not be wise because there are circumstances where the committee might want to call in an application because it has implications for other similar situations elsewhere in the district. This can be because there are policy implications or issues of substance that are not to do with the ward but to do with custom and practice generally. I'll offer you a hypothetical example of this. There's an application in one part of the district that exhibits sharp practice at least and possibly unlawful practice being undertaken by applicants and or advisors. The situation appears to be a local one that the ward member would wish to call in, but for various reasons they're not minded to do so. However, the details of the particular case involve very similar circumstances to another case on the other side of the district. The same modus operandi, the same advisors, etc., etc. This would be noticed by members of the committee, but would not necessarily be known to local ward members. Just suppose, for some inexplicable reason, the ward member did indeed choose not to call in the application. The application could not be called in this case. Clearly that would be unfortunate and not really in the spirit of members being able to represent not only their local communities, but also the district as a whole. My amendment therefore proposes that as well as ward members being able to call in applications to committee, also members of the committee should be able to do so for applications of district-wide importance. The arbiter in this case would be the chairman of the committee, who would have to assent to this mechanism being employed. I hope you'll agree with me that this is a sensible amendment for what has been proposed, and I commend that amendment to you. Thank you.
Councillor Giuliani.
Mr. Chairman, just to say that I do accept the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Yes, I think it's a good idea. I've always supported this kind of thing. When I was chairman of planning, councillors used to approach me and ask if I can bring something in where it's not their ward. Back in the day, don't mind. I just want to know whether the same councillor who's called it in is not their ward has the same amount of time as a sitting ward councillor? For example, if I wanted to call something in Councillor Bute's ward, will I have 3 minutes or 5 minutes? So we need to clarify that. I also like to clarify where we have situations where, for example, Councillor Stock is neighbouring to Colchester Borough, St John's ward. My ward boundaries onto a Dollyland ward in Colchester Borough. You think about neighbours. We may not necessarily be councillors from our local authority, but with this new decision, new idea of calling decisions in or plan applications in, we have to say, is it going to be district councillors or is it going to be councillors maybe from other local authorities, like Baber District in the top or Colchester Borough in the west? So I know the situation in Councillor Stock's ward where the old Betts site, one side of the road is Tendring and the other side is Colchester Borough. But you could have a situation where the councillors for St John's ward may want to call something in because there's something on the Tendring side and vice versa. So I think that needs to be clarified as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chairman. And on behalf of my group, can I give our appreciation to the way, and you won't hear this very often, Carlo, my appreciation to the way that the Chairman actually ran the Working Party. It was a good experience of cooperation, the spirit of true cooperation between cross parties. And I have to say, everything in here, I agree, and so does my group. There was one part that we had concerns with, and that is the part of the motions which we have raised in the past about the chairman, whoever the chairman or chairwoman would be, Madam Chairman would be, having the total control over whether a motion was heard on the night or not. And the situation where you had to put forward the reasons before it even came to the council chamber for reasons why you thought it was urgent enough to be heard on the night. I think this goes in some way to where we want to be, and we are prepared to accept this in all good faith and give it a go. And obviously we can always return to it. But it does, as you rightly say, it does give the opportunity now for whoever moves the motion, for the proposer to give the reasons why he believes it's urgent enough to be heard on the night, and for consideration to be given from the leader or the portfolio holder on that. But also secondary to that, the chairman, on making a decision to refer that, also has to seek professional advice and also have to give good reasons as to why it's being referred. Now, that's not happening at the moment. Things are just being referred without any explanation. I think that is the frustration of when a member brings a motion to this council chamber and it's just referred without any discussion at all or any explanation. I think this does go a good step in the right direction, and that's something I believe my group can work with, hopefully after the next May elections. And if not, we can actually revisit if we're back here. But once again, not only would I like to thank the chairman on behalf of the group, but I'd also like to thank the officers who did a tremendous amount of work here. There's a lot of work goes into this. Lisa and Ian Ford did a fantastic job, and I think we should appreciate all the good work behind the scenes they do. But thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Stock.
Chairman, I'd certainly add to and endorse what has just been said. I would like to pay tribute actually to the whole working party. All members engaged in that, and I didn't take part myself for the last meeting I was going to go to, but it clashed with something else. But all I hear is good news about how people work constructively together on what is a very, very difficult technical thing, the Constitution. A word or a comma or a full stop can make a massive difference and a change. And as Councillor Anderson said, he's absolutely right. Ian Ford and particularly Lisa have worked tirelessly to deliver changes to the Constitution that deliver the kind of Constitution that we as a council want. And that's they're to be greatly thanked for that, because that is not an easy task. And I know there's more work for Lisa to do following the decision we take tonight. I think it's an appropriate time as well, Chairman, to introduce Keith Simmons our new Democratic Services Manager, if I get the title right, who's at his first council meeting tonight. Whilst we're talking about constitutional things, that's a sort of little segue there. One of the changes to the Constitution, I don't know if Carlo went into many detail on it, is the Local Plan Committee, which I have the privilege of chairing at the moment, is going to be renamed the Planning Policy and Local Plan Committee. I think that's a really positive step that will again enhance our decision making at the planning level. I think it will enable the Planning Committee to ask the Local Plan, the Planning Policy and Local Plan Committee to come up with planning policies that can be put onto planning applications as conditions, etc. And I think it will enhance what this council does by way of giving planning permissions. So there's lots of changes in there. There's a lot of work gone into this, and I do agree that it's a really, really good changes here. Fully support it, and hope we can have unanimous backing for it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Chairman. It'd be very unusual for me to say that I agree with both Councillors Stock and Councillor Henderson, because they very rarely agree as readily as they do with this, but it's excellent that they do on this occasion. First thing I note is the changes to the Local Plan Committee, which I've sat on since the election, and I was really quite surprised and amazed to learn that a planning authority like ours didn't have a committee with policy-making powers. So that's an absolutely brilliant step in the right direction, and hopefully means we can get some planning issues moved forward more quickly and more sensibly, as we've recently done, that's really, really good. The second thing, I brought forward several motions to this council since my election, and some have been decided on the night and some been sent to committee. It seems to me very logical that we send to committee. I agree with Councillor Henderson. You should be able to put your motion forward, and if it's being sent to committee, you should know why it's being sent to committee. Absolutely agree with that. But I think on almost all circumstances it should be sent to committee for many reasons. The first reason, it gives people time to think about the motion they put in. It allows the committee to look at it, get reports on it. But it also allows councillors to think very hard as to whether they want to amend it. They will have time to look at it, give it some thought, think as to whether they want to amend it, and then come back with an amendment. So it's thinking time, working time, and I think that's a really, really good move. Also, if we make it standard practice, if it is standard practice that all motions will go that way unless the chairman decides otherwise, that becomes the norm. We have a default position. I think that's superb as well. The one area I was initially concerned with was the situation regarding call-ins to planning committee of planning applications and the suggestion that it should only be done by ward members. That could have left us with several problems. A vacant seat would be a problem. A councillor long-term sick would be a problem. There could be lots and lots of problems. And we clearly needed a secondary position, if you like, so that something could be called in. I personally would have favoured that every councillor could call in at any ward. We are often reminded that we represent all of tendering, and there are reasons I would personally favour that. However, I think the amendment and the idea that that could be left to the planning committee, there are sufficient members on the planning committee that any one of us could go to one of and get that done. I think that's a particularly good compromise, and I like that. So I think overall these changes seem really, really positive and really, really good. I think they benefit everybody, whichever side of the floor we sit on, and I think we should support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to go on record as one of the working party to give my thanks to the Chairman for his excellent chairing of what was supposed to be a light touch. I was a bit disappointed every time we walked in the room. He said this shouldn't take long, and we would still be there 3 hours later. I'd also like to go on record thanking the Monitoring Officer Lisa Hastings and Ian Ford for their excellent work and putting up with us through some tricky constitutional work, and I just want to be on record for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Calver, you may remain seated.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, may I just seek clarification on what I believe Councillor Bray has just said, because I am under the impression that Councillor Everett's amendment, which again I fully support, I think is a very sensible way forward, was specifically for applications that could have a district-wide implication. whereas Councillor Bray seemed to indicate that he believed that any member of the planning committee could call in any application. That's a very different situation. Also, may I say that I think the whole purpose of our desire to change the way that motions were handled was to ensure that not every motion was referred. Absolutely. Because there will be many occasions when a motion is so simple and actually is so urgent that it is appropriate to take it on the night. So I think it really is a case of every motion being treated on its merits. Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well done.
Councillor Everett, would you like to clarify your thought on that, please?
I think the comments that Councillor Bray was making, I think actually it would be better if he explained what he meant.
I'm happy to take that. Councillor Bray, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Culver, for pointing it out there. I had probably been just a little bit too loose, but he's absolutely correct in what he said. It would be for a district-wide situation if something were to be called in. When I said that it gives the planning committee a sort of backstop position, so that if there was something that needed to be called in, that's what I meant by that. It was a bit loose. I apologise for that, Councillor. I hope you'll accept my apology for that. You are quite right in what you're saying.
Okay, members, we've got through the night so far with the B word. Let's move to Councillor Guglielmi to sum up, please. If you'd like to sum up, please, Councillor Guglielmi.
Mr. Chairman, we're having a conversation on prostate cancer. Yes, I'm delighted that of this outcome. I know that there was a lot of debates on in the working group on the way to motions. We were trying to be very radical at the first and to bring in huge changes, which I think on hindsight it's been quite well managed. You know, we've introduced something new. This will give the chairman the flexibility to be able to take things on the night or not, as the case may be, and it will be much more transparent. I think at the last full council meeting, the debate was mainly really on the scheme of delegation for how to call applications to the planning committee, and I think we've advanced greatly on that. The local plan committee we only assumed had policy-making powers, but it was very apparent that as we were so keen to set a local plan committee which dealt with the local plan, we kind of overlooked at the time 4 years ago that did not have any policy-making power. So a huge amount of goods come out of this. I think to go back in time, in 2012, when we had a major review of the Constitution, what we really done here, in fact, when this came to council last time, all the various changes that affect operational matters that officers deal with, they were completely kind of allowed to proceed. And that's when, at the time when we carried out the very first review, it became very apparent that we had to kind of separate the two. One that's affecting members and members only, and how we conduct ourselves and how we govern in the chamber. And two is the actual running of the council, which is really not for members to get involved with. So I'm absolutely delighted. It will be absolutely wonderful if we get all-round consensus on this. And I'm delighted that these changes have been supported by just about everyone, as far as I can see. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So the amendment has been accepted. So all those in favour of the motion? Thank you. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. Item number 17, report submitted to the Council by an Overview and Scrutiny Committee. There are none on this occasion. Item number 18, recommendation from the Licensing and Registration Committee. Councillor Cousins.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the fifth statement of licensing policy produced by Tendring District Council as the licensing authority under the Gambling Act of 2005. And it will be the basis for all the gambling-related licensing decisions taken by the Council as the licensing authority over the next 3 years, commencing this month. This policy sets out how the Council as a licensing authority will seek to balance increased leisure opportunities with the protection that children, vulnerable people and communities need and expect. And it was suggested to me this wasn't very interesting, but the Council recognises how important this sector of the entertainment industry is within the district, and well-run businesses will get the support of this Council. New gambling-related developments that are well-planned and can demonstrate initiatives that prevent gambling from being a source of crime and disorder, ensure that gambling is conducted in a fair and open way, and protect people from being harmed or exploited by gambling are welcomed. However, the Council will not hesitate in dealing firmly where problems of gambling-related crime and disorder exist. This policy will be kept under review and is a living document, and it will be amended when issues arise that make change necessary. The Council will seek through the licensing process and the decisions it takes to make tendering a safe and welcoming place for both residents and visitors to enjoy. So I'd just like to recommend to Council the recommendation on page 69 that the final draft of the revised policy be adopted and published in accordance with the timetable previously agreed by the Licensing and Registration Committee at its meeting held 18th of July 2018.
Okay, I see no questions for this. So all those in favour? Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Item number 19, report to the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chairman. It's the report as per pages 147 and 148, and I have nothing further to add.
Thank you. Item number 20, urgent matters for debate. I have none. Date of the next scheduled meeting is Tuesday the 5th of February. I wish you all good night. Thank you very much.
Please be upstanding.